The Tennis Gambling Podcast and the Sports Game Podcast Network is brought to you by Nordic Fantasy. Sign up with the promo code SGPN, score up to $1,000 bonus cash. We're also brought to you by Rhythm. Get your 70 free trial today by going to sportscampus.com/rhythm, sportscampus.com/RITHMM. And welcome, everybody, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast here on the Sports Game Podcast Network. It's currently Wednesday morning, roughly 11 a.m. Eastern Time on September 25th. I'm Rosso, Scott Reichel, once again going solo for this pod. It's officially the second episode of the Outright series for this week. We did Tokyo about a day ago. Now it's time to get into Beijing. So we're going to preview the China Open, going with the outrights, etc. However, unlike Tokyo, unfortunately, we have no outrights, so apologies there. But, we have no quarter odds, so we can't exactly go through the quarter breakdowns. I'll go through them anyway, just for the sake of going through my logic for the outrights, but unfortunately no quarter markets, so apologies if you were trying to bet on some quarters. Is what it is. Point is, though, we do have the quarter still up for Tokyo, if you do want to go through those instead. Anyway, before getting into the actual breakdown of this event, want to remind you once again, to like, subscribe on YouTube. Reminder that you can still listen to the podcast audio only on Spotify and Apple, so you can still like and subscribe on YouTube, but you could also rate or review the podcast on Spotify or Apple if you do want to show some support. A reminder, though, if you are new to the YouTube channel, welcome. Of course, we do live streams, and you can watch them afterwards, the YouTube video, or if you wanted audio only, once again, it is also available on Spotify or Apple. Plus, a reminder that you can check out the SGPN merch store. A lot of great Tennis Game Podcast merch. We have sweatshirts, t-shirts, and mugs, all high quality, all affordable. So I recommend getting yourself something very cheap, and I do think you'll enjoy the content we have. Plus, a reminder that we have a brand new show on the SGPN network, as you do have a new show called Get to the Points, which is hosted by Doug Stanhope, Brandon Walsh, and Sean Green as they host the newest podcast every Thursday before the game. Doug, Brandon, and Sean will give out their favorite plays while talking crap to each other. A reminder that Doug and Brandon are professional comedians. You might know from the Joe Rogan podcast, the Howard Stern Show, and Comedy Central. Subscribe where you do get your podcast. Anyway, normally we get into a recap of what happened in the last episode. However, none of the lock and dog picks actually happened yet. So if you do want some bonus action on Wednesday night, Thursday morning, early Thursday morning, check out the Tokyo episode because the lock and dog picks did not happen for that event. Either way, though, we're going to start off by recapping a couple of matches that actually happened in Tokyo last night because why not? Starting off, you had Navone, who ended up beating Darderi. Both guys who are not very good on hard court. Darderi's been a mess for the last couple months. Point is, though, we saw Darderi lose in straight sets. For the other matches, you saw Berrettini beat Dzanchulp in straight sets. Still can't believe Dzanchulp beat Alcaraz. He's been terrible before and since. But the point is that was definitely a one-off there for Dzanchulp. He's been bad since beating Alcaraz, and he kind of reverted back to being a challenger level player. But Berrettini did beat him comfortably in straight sets. Hurkacz, one of the outrights we gave out, did win. Was not easy, but he won in 3 sets against Giron, and he ended up getting the job done despite losing a breaker in the second set. Meanwhile, you saw Humbert beat Mochizuki 6-1, 6-2. Not a surprise there. Humbert's been a good form lately. Mochizuki, we know, is not exactly a great player by any means. Point is, though, you saw really little drama on Wednesday morning, early Wednesday morning, besides the exception being the Hurkacz and Giron match. And even with that being the case, you saw Hurkacz go up a break early in the third set. So not much drama, not much worth talking about. However, I am actually going to switch gears a little bit because, one, I want to stall to do an ad read. Two, I want to talk about some news involving the WTA for a second, because there were some, I'd say, concerning headlines and I'd say stories going around about Rybakina, and I wanted to briefly talk about it. Now, I know that this podcast is mostly an ATP podcast, but of course, Rybakina has been a well-known player for a long time. I still do Grand Slam episodes for the women's tournaments, and I do want to at least point out the fact that Rybakina has kind of gone AWOL. And the reason why I want to talk about it is because there were some concerning overall, I'd say, quotes that are going around, or overall just stories about how Rybakina may have been undergoing some potential abuse from her head coach. Now, from what I understand, I have not seen any report that any of it was sexual. It does seem like it was entirely psychological, but it does seem like Vukov, who is Rybakina's coach or former coach, created a lot of, let's just say, mental stress for Rybakina, and now it seems like she's needed a couple of months to potentially collect herself because she's an emotional wreck right now. At least that's my understanding of the situation. Point is, though, it does seem like the coach was throwing insults at her, and of course, Rybakina being young and kind of being, I don't want to say a phenom, but you get my point. She definitely was still a teenager when she was blossoming into a top 10 player in the world. It seems like mentally she was not fully ready for all of the emotional, I'd say, abuse and the bullying and the berating, etc., that the coach was kind of giving her. And because of that, it does seem like Rybakina is taking some time away from the sport. Hopefully, she ends up recovering, and hopefully she ends up participating in some of the events in the next year or so. But I wanted to mention it because Rybakina was, of course, a top 3, top 4 player in the world, Grand Slam champion, and we do know that she's been kind of up and down lately, but part of that reason could be because of the, I say, mental state that she's in. So hopefully she gets the help that she needs, and hopefully, if the reports are true, Vukov never coaches again. But the point is, I wanted to at least bring it up. Rybakina is currently, I'd say, unavailable, and she has been extremely just stressed out, and she's dealing with a lot of trauma from her previous coach, which you hate to see. A reminder that even though these athletes are given a lot of expectations early, and they are, of course, the best in their respective sports because of the expectations and all, a reminder that there's a lot of stress on these athletes, and some of them, I'd say, are put in better situations than others. It does seem like Rybakina's either parents or overall support system kind of let her down by giving her an abusive coach that was going to push her to the brink. And unfortunately, the actual stress broke her, which you kind of hate to see. But I wanted to mention it. So Rybakina right now is kind of, I'd say, away from the sport. We'll see when she comes back, but hopefully she is mentally ready when she comes back, and hopefully she makes a full recovery. Wanted to mention that, though. That's kind of some news reports that ended up circulating about a day or two ago, mostly about how Rybakina was unable to actually come back because of psychological problems. Hopefully, she gets the help she needs, and once again, Vukov hopefully does not coach again. Anyway, time to move on into the actual tournament in Beijing. Before getting into that, though, I want to remind you once again that we are brought to you by Underdog Fantasy because they have a pick'em and they have a ton of awesome items on their menu. They also have first touchdown projections now. There are a ton of ways to win with the NFL, college football, MLB, MMA, and more. Their lab is jam-packed with profit boosts and no sweat entries. And a reminder that you can now use specials and boosts on Ireflex entries. I'll probably do something with Tarazi in WNBA action tonight. Give me Tarazi lower, 3.5 rebounds in that one. A reminder, though, you should use the promo code SGPN when you claim your special pick and your first-time deposit offer up to $1,000 bonus cash on Fantasy promo code SGPN. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast. Just finished briefly getting into the matches in Tokyo for Wednesday morning that took place, recapping those. Now it's time to preview the China Open. So starting off with the recent winners. Now, I'm going to read off the recent winners. You can tell that there were some COVID gap years in between. So for the recent winners, you saw Sinner beat Medvedev, then Thiem beat Tsitsipas, and Basilashvili beat Del Potro. So once again, you can kind of tell where the gap was. It was in between the Sinner winning and the Thiem winning. You had about 3 years off. So the point is, it's pretty difficult to actually, I'd say, draw conclusions from the recent winner list. But Sinner did beat Medvedev in the final last year. So Sinner is back trying to defend his title. Really stacked field. I mentioned in the actual Tokyo episode that Tokyo's field was fine. Fritz was the favorite according to the betting markets, and a lot of quality players ended up in Beijing instead. Sinner and Alcaraz are in Beijing, so you can tell that Beijing will be the more popular event based on ratings over the next couple of days. But point is, should be a fun tournament. A lot of overall, I'd say, high-profile matchups that are on the horizon, and we'll see what happens there. Anyway, getting into the actual outright picks for the event, I'm going to go through the odds first. Sorry, no quarter odds. Apologies, not my fault. I tried to look through every book. No books have quarters, so apologies there. For the outrights, you have Sinner as the favorite at plus 175. Once again, shop around, try to find the best line. You have Alcaraz at plus 180. You have Medvedev at 550. Rublev at 11-1. Dimitrov at 14-1. Shang at 25-1, fresh off his first ever title. You have Musetti at 30-1, fresh off of losing to Shang in the final. You have Zhang, who lost in the final to Cilic. He's back at 40-1. You have Kashanov at 40-1. Leheshka at 40-1. Griekspoor 50-1. Jari 50-1. Struve 50-1. Pericard 50-1. You kind of get the point. If you want some other long shots that are at least worth mentioning by name, Busta is 65-1. Wawrinka is 80-1, and Monfils is 65-1. Anyway, to get into the actual draw for the main guys here, Sinner has a pretty easy draw. Jari in the first round has been terrible for the last couple months. Struve or Wawrinka in the second round. Good luck to those guys. Then you have a matchup against probably Dimitrov in the quarters. However, Dimitrov has Agut in the first round, which is actually pretty difficult. We saw Agut, I'll get through qualifying. I believe Agut beat, I want to say Safulin in the last qualifying match, but he has been pretty good lately. Now, Agut we know is up there in years, and I don't trust him long term because of stamina issues, but when he is given some days off, he's dangerous. And I think that Dimitrov could be potentially an upset alert in the first round. We'll see what happens. I believe Dimitrov's 5-1 lifetime against Agut, but the point is not exactly the easiest first round match for Dimitrov there. So Sinner should coast. Really no way around it. Long story short, I think Sinner's going to probably not drop a set entering the semis, or at least the quarters. Maybe Dimitrov can win a set, but Sinner's kind of killed him in the last couple meetings, so I think Sinner should coast into the semis. Now, for the second quarter, you have Rublev against Busta, which is not easy at all. That is actually a pretty difficult match in the first round. You're looking at Zhang against Fokina in the other match there, which is also, once again, could be competitive, could go either way. I'm not picking Zhang or Fokina to actually do anything in the actual tournament, but you get my point. Should be a pretty interesting overall set of matches there. You're looking at, though, Shang against Bu, who both had good runs last week. Shang won a title. And then you have Musetti against Bergs in the first round. So you might get a rematch of the final between Shang and Musetti in the second round. However, for that quarter, don't really trust anybody. Rublev, I'm definitely not trusting. He's not played since the U.S. Open. We know he's been a head case. And Busta, when healthy, has looked good. We saw him make the final in Winston-Salem. Then he got injured, but he appears to be healthy right now. So that could be a pretty open quarter. Shang would be a good option if you have some trust in him. That I'd say stamina is not a concern because, of course, he made a deep run last week, and we'll see if he can look sharp here, especially with a guy with injury issues. So hopefully he stays healthy, and I think that could be a very open quarter in the tournament because I don't trust anybody in particular to just blow through the competition. Third quarter, though, you have the Medvedev quarter against Monfils in the first round. Not easy for a hard court battle. You have Bublik, but once again, a pretty weak quarter in general. Assuming that Medvedev ends up getting through Monfils, he really should run through this quarter unopposed. Bublik, I don't think he'll beat Medvedev. I think he has too many unforced errors. Kaboli might beat Bublik in the first round, too. So Medvedev should get through the quarter. But Medvedev has not exactly been in great form lately. We saw him lose in, for example, the Laver Cup a couple times. And they were, of course, exhibitions. But he did lose to a couple guys he was favored to beat. So not exactly, I'd say, a fan of Medvedev's current form, and Medvedev, we know, is a bit of a head case, especially in 2 out of 3 sets for the last year and change. So I'm going to pass on him as well. Don't really see many options there in the third quarter. For the fourth quarter, though, this is the Alcaraz quarter. He has Pericard in the first round, then either Greek Sport or Kekmanovic. Then you have a matchup against potentially Kashanov in the quarters. Could be Mensik, but Alcaraz should coast. Really no way around it. I know Greek Sport gave him a bit of a sweat there when they faced off earlier this season. I believe that was in the Olympics. Point is, though, Alcaraz did beat him, and I think you're looking at Alcaraz being in good form. Was not in great form, losing to, of course, Zandschulp in the U.S. Open. Then he came back for the Laver Cup, and he looked really good, and the Davis Cup as well. So I do think that Alcaraz has regained his form. We'll see if that continues. But I liked what I saw in the Davis Cup. We saw him beat Fritz and Shelton in straight sets each, so I like how he's played. I think Alcaraz should coast through that quarter. Probably not dropping a set in that quarter as well. So going through, once again, my thoughts on the quarters individually. Now time to kind of wrap it all up with the outright picks here. I am going to go with chalk. I am going to go with Sinner as my first choice at 175. Can't really go against him. Sinner being the hard court expert on tour right now. We know that he won both Grand Slams in hard court. He won a bunch of titles on hardcourt earlier this season. He's just a phenomenal hardcourt player. And I think with that being the case, I am going to go with him. Defending champion as well, like his odds at plus 175. I am going to go with Alcaraz as well at plus 195. Can't really go against him either. It is pure chalk. No, it didn't really work out well for us in the U.S. Open because we went with Djokovic instead of Sinner. But the point is, Sinner, we saw win both Grand Slams. We saw Alcaraz look sharp in the Laver Cup, and I think that their draws are pretty easy with their respective quarters. They should be massive favorites in basically every match. So I'm expecting a collision course between Sinner and Alcaraz for the final. Spoiler, that's kind of just what I'm expecting for this event. However, I did throw in one long shot, and even though it's going to be a guy that might battle some fatigue from last week, I couldn't trust Medvedev, who has not won a title in a while. Rublev, I definitely couldn't trust. Dimitrov is in Sinner's quarter, so that's an easy pass. But for the home country angle, and for a guy that has some upside who I think is going to be top 10 in the next year or two, I'm going with Shang at 29-1. Now, will this win? Probably not. But I think Shang at 29-1 is a decent price. I think Shang's a good player. I think he's undervalued. And I think that in future events, he might have prices around the 2,000 range. But based on the overall, I'd say, mental instability of Rublev, Dimitrov's kind of cooled off over the last couple months, and I do think that he also got injured in the U.S. Open, so I question how healthy Dimitrov is for this event. I think 29-1 is a good price for a guy in his home country that is a very good hardcore player that we saw last week beat a bunch of guys in pretty convincing fashion. Good competition, beat Bublik, beat Musetti, a couple other guys in straight sets. I think he's in good form. Now, will he win this event? Probably not, but I think for this price, I like the overall value, and I do think 29-1 is worth something. I don't think Musetti should be 30-1 when we saw Shang beat him in straight sets. So with that being the case, I am going to go with Shang at 29-1 as my long shot, but my picks for the event are complete chalk. Going to go with Sinner at 175, going to go with Alcaraz at 195, and I am going to go with Shang as my long shot at 29-1. Anyway, of course, I like Shang to win the quarter. Unfortunately, we have no odds for that, but Shang to win the quarter would be the reasonable pick to back him in this event. I still like his overall form. I like his game, and I do think the home country advantage definitely helps with the crowd support. And Rublev, we know, is a head case, which definitely opens the door for Shang to make a deep run in this event. So Shang to win the quarter would be my option if I had to go with that. Probably at a decent price as well. But unfortunately, I have no odds on that, so I am going to go with the outright to win the event instead by itself. Anyway, point is that's going to wrap it up for the actual outrights. Apologies, it was short, but once again, it's not my fault. I have no quarter odds, so can't really break those down. Did break down the quarters from, I'd say, just step-by-step basis without any odds attached to it, but that's the best I can do. So point is that's going to wrap it up for the outright portion of this episode. Now it's time for the lock and dog picks for the first round. However, before we get to that, I want to remind you once again that we are brought to you by BetUS, because BetUS has been around for more than 30 years. They can definitely be a new book for you, especially when you consider how easy the deposits are, because you can use crypto and get lightning fast payouts. You could also support SGPN and get yourself access to another book by signing up BetUS. Use our link to sign up and get a 1 to 25% deposit bonus on your first 3 deposits, which is a great deal. Go to sportsgamblingcom/BetUS, sportsgamblingcom/BetUS, promo code SGPN, so they know we sent you. BetUS, America's favorite sportsbook. We're also brought to you by Rhythm. SGPN's proud partner, Rhythm, is the #1 AI-powered sports betting platform that helps provide bettors of all levels the ability to build custom predictive models in seconds. Get predictions on money line, spread totals, and props. Build your own model, or you can copy one of the top-performing models on the leaderboard, or press Build a Model for me, and Rhythm will give you predictions on every single game and player props. And they also have a bunch of stats, research, and trend analysis to give you even more betting insights. A reminder, try it out for free, 7-day free trial by going to sportscampus.com/rhythm, sportscampus.com/RATHM. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast. Just finished going through the outrights for Beijing. Now it's time for the lock and dog picks for the first round. For the lock, I am going to go back to Alcaraz, taking on Perricard in the first round, and I am going to go with the under 21.5 at -120. I believe this was on DraftKings. Now, I know it sounds dangerous because Perricard is a very good server, so you might end up getting maybe a breaker in there. However, Alcaraz has been great recently, and we saw him look good in the Laver Cup, beat Fritz and Shelton in straight sets. 2 guys who are also really good at serving, and none of those sets went to breakers either, so I do like how Alcaraz has returned over the last couple days. But Perricard has been awful lately. He's lost 5 of his last 6 matches. I'm going to point out, though, that no tiebreak in the match is -162. So if you get no tiebreak here, you're easily going under. Like, Alcaraz should win in straight sets. He's -325 to win in straight sets. But it's mostly fitting Perricard, who has not had many breaks lately, but he's also really not a great tennis player. We saw him win a title earlier this season on clay. Bit shocking. I've compared him to Eubanks before. I think he's the French Eubanks. Good serve. I'm aware of it. Really awful in returning, and he's not really great in any other aspect. The one-handed backhand is fun. Is it consistent? No. But I think Alcaraz, who looked pretty good against 2 good servers in Fritz and Shelton about a week ago, should be able to break at least 1 time per set here. Even with potentially a breaker here, you still can get there if you get a 6-2. But I think that Alcaraz should break at least 2 times in this match. I don't see Perricard breaking. He's an awful returner. But Alcaraz, I think, has the game and the form to definitely get the job done here. 21.5 feels a bit high, just based on how much better Alcaraz is than the competition here, and based on Perricard's current form. So I am going to go with Alcaraz and Perricard under, kind of a way of taking Alcaraz in straight sets, while also getting cutting into the juice. But Alcaraz, for the game spread, is -4.5. Why would I want to do that when I can just get 21.5? I just feel like looking at a spot where 6-4, 6-4 is realistic, then you still cash the under, where you'd still lose the spread in the same type of game match script. So I am going to go with the under instead. give me the under 21.5 games in the Alcaraz-Pericard match as my lock at -120. For my dog, I am going to go back to Rublev as he's taking on Carreño Busta in the first round. Mentioned before that Rublev's been a head case. We've known it, and he has been dropping a lot of sets. Plus, he has not played since the U.S. Open. No Davis Cup action, no anything. So he has been kind of just sitting around doing nothing for the last couple months. With that being the case, I do like the value for Busta here to make it interesting, because Busta, we did see look pretty good in Winston-Salem. We saw him look good in the Davis Cup as well. So I do think there's some value on Busta to win a set or Busta plus 1.5 sets at plus 115. Couple reasons why. First of all, I mentioned a second ago, he did beat Thompson in the Davis Cup, and that is a pretty good showing based on Busta getting injured in Winston-Salem. We saw him get killed in the U.S. Open because he kind of rushed back after fatigue, and I'm happy to say that he looked healthy against Thompson, so I do like his current form. He was really good. We saw him give Zverev a run for his money in Cincinnati, and we saw Zverev make a deep run in Cincinnati. So the point is, Busta is in solid form when healthy. He appears to be healthy. Rublev, though, has not played in a while, and rust could be a factor. Plus, I'm going to point out the head-to-head. Yes, they are dated, but the point is they faced off 4 times in the head-to-head, and 3 of the 4 meetings did not end in straight sets. So Busta historically is 0-4 lifetime against Rublev, but 3 of those 4 meetings were competitive, and unfortunately he fell short. But we only need him to win a set here. I think fading Rublev, who has not played in about a month or so, is a pretty good fade candidate for rust, and you are looking at Busta, who was in good form in Winston-Salem, made the final there, saw him once again get injured, and then we saw him bounce back, beating Thompson in 3 sets in the Davis Cup. So I like how he's played. I think he has the game to win a set off Rublev, and if Rublev has a mental breakdown again at some point in this match, the door will be open for Busta to get the job done for at least 1 set. I think Busta can outplay Rublev for maybe 25 minutes, and that might be all we need for a close set to get the job done. So I am going to go with the dog here to win a set at plus 115. So once again, my picks for the first round in Beijing. The lock's going to be on Alcaraz and Pericard under 21.5 games at -120. The dog's going to be on Carreño Busta plus 1.5 sets, or in other words, Busta to win a set against Rublev at plus 115. That's going to wrap it up. A reminder, we're back once again for the semis of Tokyo and Beijing, whichever one comes first. So keep that in mind. We're back for the semis of those two respective the quarters of those events. So just to recap, we're going to be back for the quarters of Tokyo and Beijing. Might once again have one before the other, but we're going to be back in a couple days. Until next time, find me on Twitter at Reichel Radio. Find me on the NBA show. Going to have an NBA episode actually tomorrow with Munaf. Going to break down the Southeast Division. NBA right around the corner, about a month away. So we're going to start our off-season episode series, so keep that in mind. WNBA as well. Going to have an episode over the next day or two. Depends if there's going to be a Game 3. Right now, we have no Game 3s, but we'll see who wins tonight in the Lynx game as well as the Fever game. So we'll see what happens. Point is, though, if we get a Game 3, we'll have an episode for that. If not, then we'll just be there to break down the second round. So check that out over the next day or two. And a reminder, I'm also on the MLB show. Going to be on the show later today with, I believe, Munaf as well. Till next time, though, good luck to all of you and all of your bets. Bye, everyone.